Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished marketing professional from Gurgaon, India, Kriti Mukherjee. Kriti, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Ashutosh. Morning to you.
Thank you. Kriti is a marketing and communications professional, and she has over 2 decades of experience. So, Kriti, before we talk marketing and communications, tell me a little bit about your own journey in brief.
Going back, I started my journey because, my professional journey, so to say, because I was always in a hurry to join the workforce. Since I was in college, I couldn't wait. So I took up the first best opportunity that came my way back when I was 22, and that was in corporate communications in a non-banking finance company. And I loved the profession so much that there was no looking back since then. And from there, I've moved on to various roles, all under the marketing umbrella. And I've worked both in India and outside as a marketing professional. And the funny thing is, with every change in my profession, I've been fortunate to kind of explore a completely new area of marketing, which has enriched my journey and given me that holistic knowledge of the different ways you can make marketing work. I've just become an independent marketing consultant now, and I'm advising brands on an independent basis. That about for a month or so. Before this, I was partner at Inception Business Services. So yeah, but it's been completely a marketing journey for these last 23 years has been nothing short of brilliant. And so here I am now.
And I'm sure your next innings as a consultant in marketing will be equally brilliant. Let me start by asking you, Kriti, what goes into building a brand?
Actually, building a brand is a continuous process, right? It's an agile process. But first thing that I'd like to say is, before we get to build a brand, we really need to have a cutting-edge solution that solves a problem for someone out there, which is, eventually a target audience.
Right.
And there are many people who make the mistake of, all of us want to make money, but the mistake that a lot of people make is coming with something that you think is brilliant without knowing whether it is solving a certain problem or a challenge out there, and you think it's a brilliant idea, you've brought it to the market, and you quickly want to make money. So the first step is actually do a ton of research and have a solution that will solve a problem.
Right.
Because customers today will only invest in brands that they trust in. So, unless you have the perfect solution, you cannot build a brand. So don't even start marketing, so to say.
Fascinating.
Second thing,
Sorry, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Second thing is to, of course, once you have that, give it its identity. What it stands for, its mission, who are the target groups, what voice, tone, what style does this brand want to follow, how will it cut the clutter, all of that. Another mistake that many brands do is skip this step to quickly go and sell. But unless your customers know you and have that kind of association with you, it's going to be very difficult to sell. So these foundational steps, I think, are very, very important.
Yeah. Well said. And based on the work that you've done with so many different organizations, what in your view are some of the common challenges many brand owners or companies face when it comes to building their brand?
I can, actually categorize challenges into compartments now because a multi-business conglomerate has a certain type, certain list of challenges. A startup will have a different list. Deep-pocketed legacy brands have a different list. So, for instance, one of the challenges that large firms have with various departments and subsidiaries, that they do not represent the entirety of their brand in equal measure. And what happens with that is the awareness of customers about the brand in its entirety decreases. And secondly, there is kind of and that actually again falls on the marketer to fix. So secondly, it is actually an internal problem. The people in the departments that are less represented get demotivated, and it kind of finally starts to show in their work or in the kind of pride they hold about the
Mm.
firm. That's a big business problem. Startups look for shortcuts because they want to impress, their funds or their funders, and that is again a very short-term view to marketing, and it does not bring in the vision that a brand should have for itself, or a goal that a brand should have for itself.
Mm.
These are real problems, and it is actually a need that a startup quickly wants to show something to get funds. But it also is like a double-edged sword. What do you do first? Get the funds or market first? And these are things that we have to dive in to see what the unique problems are and then solve for it.
Well said. The other thing that I've often wondered about is, and I remember, when I started in 1979, marketing branding was a function of huge billboards and full
Correct.
page ads and long films in cinema halls. Now everything is on a little personal phone.
Mhm.
Uh, how has the rise of digital platforms started to impact traditional marketing and communication strategies?
So digital actually is not really, it's on its way out the word, because it's become so much of an need, and
Right.
it's become a must have rather than a good to have. And although internet only started in the 1990s, has moved in breakneck speed, like lightning speed, and there's so much that brands have been able to capture from the internet. I
Hmm.
think it has changed beautifully, Ashutosh, because traditional marketing was only accessible to brands with deep pockets, or large institutions, or huge, multinational businesses. Whereas the coming of digital has allowed smaller brands, people with lesser budgets, to access their customers one on one. So it has
Hmm.
increased their reach. It has made it more interactive for brands to talk to their customers, to reach out to them, to get the engagement. And also, it's so much more cost effective.
Hmm.
And it's very, very cost effective, and it's targeted. That is the best. Like a
Hmm.
billboard, anybody from like your newspaper vendor to the CEO of a company would see, and it was all spread out. So same thing with the, although you get to localize with television channels,
Hmm.
etc. One, they are very expensive, and second, they're not targeted. So digital plays a beautiful role there.
Correct. Well said. Well said. The other thing that I wanted to ask you was, that I've often said that brands are living beings.
Correct.
They are. They're also brands are also like children. They need to be nurtured all the time.
Absolutely.
And yet, there are some brands that last 100 years, and there are some that die very quickly.
Mhm.
How do you ensure that, or how does one ensure that a brand's message stays relevant and consistent over a long period of time?
I'll take your example itself, Ashutosh, sorry. So like a child, as the child is growing, you move from nursery rhymes to Shakespeare to, whatever high level poetry there is, and maybe different languages. You go into Greek mythology. So you are actually feeding this child with every kind of fodder out there to see this child, you know, optimize every resource it has to become the individual uh, that is possible,
Mhm.
right? With brands too. Like, I'll go back to the time when I said the foundation is important.
Mhm.
So your, who you are, the tone, the voice, the style that you use, the uh, all of this is important. The positioning is really important, and that should never change, Ashutosh, because for customers to associate with a brand, they have to just look at a color and think of the
Correct.
brand, or they look at a font and they think of the brand. But what must change is the constant research of target audiences and their growing needs, because a one-time exercise on a buyer persona or of the target audience is as good as not reading more or
Mm.
stopping at nursery rhymes, like
Right,
I said.
right.
The needs of customers evolve
Mm.
with market dynamics, and to keep agile and to keep constantly knowing that, to constantly ask for feedback
Mm.
is one way to kind of also evolve your brand to make sense to the customer.
Mm.
The second thing is to keep constant insight into trends that are coming up,
Right.
micro trends that are coming up, and seeing whether your brand has a voice in it, and if so, what does that brand want to tell their audiences, and stay relevant with things like this,
Mm.
right? Right now, for instance, ESG is the big buzzword, and customers are constantly talking about they want to only invest in a brand that they know are using sustainable means in bringing about their products.
Mm.
So then you have to stay relevant, you have to do something, become responsible, and take an act in that direction. I
Great
think
response.
that's what.
Yeah, great response. Thank you. Few minutes back, we spoke about the digital world and also what's going to happen in social media.
Mhm.
With so many different social media platforms, how does a brand ensure that the message across different social media platforms, which clearly have different types of audiences, how does the message stay consistent?
One, Ashutosh, I don't think it is important for every brand. For some, it may be
Mm.
to be present in all social media platforms. I think that is sometimes a wastage of your resources and budget.
Mm.
So, like you said, they have different audiences. You choose the platform where your audience is in,
Mm.
right? And the rest of it is the nuances of the platform. If your audience is in two or three different places, you need to curate content as per the platform. Like a LinkedIn post won't look very good on Instagram. Instagram is a more young audience. If you're looking at kind of owning that kind of audience to take notice of you, then you have to speak their language, and
Mm.
you have to provide them with content that they resonate with. While LinkedIn is a more professional, senior
Right.
leadership, managerial. So you have to sound more professional there. I think it just takes that bunch of understanding. Yeah.
Mm. And based on, again, your experience over the last 2 decades, what are the kind of emerging trends you are beginning to see when it comes to branding?
Emerging trends, as in now, see, artificial intelligence is again another buzzword along
The
with
new
it's,
buzzword, absolutely.
yeah, it's a big thing, right? So people are trying to integrate that a lot for efficiency in their branding,
Mm.
for effectiveness in what they want to say. It's kind of really moving the game to cutting down a marketer's time so that a marketer can actually use their brains for relationship building,
Mm.
something that AI can't do.
Right.
And initially, marketers' time would be spread thin between things that a machine can do. Plus, what is more important is relationship building, nurturing leads,
Mm.
talking to your customer, getting that feedback, integrating the feedback into your marketing campaign. So this frees up a lot of the marketers' time to do the real work.
Mhm.
And I think many companies are starting to realize that, and integrating artificial intelligence into their, branding and marketing
Mm.
campaigns.
Mm. And conversely, how have consumer expectations changed? The brands are now addressing multiple levels of consumers,
Right.
from a baby boomer like me to the Gen Zs and maybe even the Alpha Gen now.
Right.
Based on your own experience and understanding, how have customer expectations changed over the last
Mhm.
few decades?
So with the digital age, Ashutosh, while getting in front of your target audience has become vastly simple,
Hmm.
it has also cluttered the space.
Hmm.
So the customer now is looking at 15 different solutions with that one problem. So right now, the brand's expectation from a marketer is to how do I cut the clutter? How do I be seen? How can I be more visible than the 10 other out there?
Mm.
And I think if you are customer centric, which is the dire need of the the society now, if you're
Mm.
customer centric and if you're empathetic about your customers' journey, then you will definitely remain relevant all your throughout your journey.
Mm.
That being one, and then the second thing is how to cut the clutter. That is something that us marketers bring in the content, the kind of strategy we use, the kind of platforms we use, the way we allocate budget.
Mm.
That all helps in assisting in standing out or making creating a differentiator.
Mm.
Uh, that is how I think you can do that.
Very interesting.
The solution, yeah.
Very, very interesting. My next question, Kriti, was on technology. We've spoken a little bit about artificial intelligence, but uh, how are you and your your clients, using analytics to build strong communication messages for your brands?
So, marketing is really creativity and analytics in equal parts,
Mm.
because you need creativity to give birth to your brand and to make it thrive.
Mm.
But to make it thrive, also, you constantly need to go back to performance indexes. What is, if you're marketing on LinkedIn, going and checking the analytics there constantly to see what is working, what is not working, what kind of audiences am I attracting, which kind of content is really resonating with my audience, what should I do, what kind of format should I use. So this is not something that you look at the end of the month.
Mm.
This is something, the minute you publish your content, you should have a pulse of how it is performing for you on the platform constantly, and you should look at it weekly and monthly and quarterly, to
Mm.
constantly improvise and constantly understand and get to know your audience. And
Mm.
it is only then that you will be able to thrive. You
Mm.
cannot put content out there and not know what's happening with it,
Mm.
because you will come out frustrated very soon. It's the same thing with the website, or if you're doing digital Google ads, or using technology in any form. The good thing is they all give you massive reports,
Mm.
and as a marketer, you have to have the skills to deep dive into those reports and see what's working and what's not, and
Mm.
then taking all that learning to formulating your next marketing steps.
Mm. Well
I
said.
think that is
Well said. So time for two or three more questions. My next question is on culture.
right.
We live in an incredibly diverse, culturally diverse country. Every
Mhm.
state has its own norms. Every language has its own norms.
Right.
What are your thoughts on the impact of cultural differences when you're
Mhm.
addressing India as one market?
That's a beautiful question, and I'm very happy to get get that one, because actually, when I was working in the US, like I said, my different phases of my marketing life has exposed me to a different new need in the market, or learning from the marketing area, right? In US, I was interestingly put into a role where I had to do multicultural marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing multicultural marketing for brands like MoneyGram and Aetna Healthcare
Mm.
and stuff. But MoneyGram had to speak to the, even though we are South Asians in America, they
Mm.
have to speak to the Gujarati in a certain way and
Yeah.
see what matters to the Gujarati, and the
Right.
Bengali in some other way. And they all have their nuances. And if you really want to resonate with your brand, you have to
Mm.
speak there and understand their problems and get to
Mm.
know what their ambitions are. Whether you're a insurance firm or a firm like MoneyGram,
Mm.
or even Z Telefilms. I was marketing them in the South Asian.
Mm.
Now, the other thing is, one is among India, but we were also trying to talk to the Hispanic. We were
Mm.
also trying to talk to the white. We were
Mm.
also trying to talk to the black a population there. And I'm telling you, Asha, it's really intriguing how that same message can be curated to speak to each of these cultures so that they kind of hear what they want to hear instead of shoving products right generally across the population on your faces. So it's the same thing. I brought that experience back in India when I came back, and here too, it's the same thing. I mean, uh, a health drink, for instance, if you want to market it in Calcutta, and apparently I'm told they are the most malnourished children are there because of the milk not being pure, and we did some research. So how do you speak to a mother that's concerned about that in Calcutta? Compared to someone say in Gujarat where that concern is not very rampant. So how you make these messages, how you speak, how you bring in the it's about localization always, otherwise your message doesn't go through.
Amazing.
And,
yeah, wonderful response. Thank you. So my last question to you, and this I want you to give a response for the many people who will listen to our conversation.
Right.
A lot of them are startup entrepreneurs.
Right.
I'd love to get your perspective on what do you think are 3 lessons you would want to leave behind for startup entrepreneurs who want to build their brand.
So as you're starting, it is a must. Don't think of marketing as a stopgap arrangement to, kind of that you can just plug in and plug out.
Yeah.
Marketing has to be an integral part of your business strategy.
Yeah.
Because without it, and just when you're looking for investment, if you start and stop it, investors will know what you're doing there, and they do their due diligence, and it's easy to find out what you're doing. So build in, and absolutely at the business planning stage, keep a budget aside that is not going to be touched for any other thing but marketing. And start your journey with marketing instead of going along the line and saying, oh, we need this. And so that's one, build it in. Second, be consistent. Be really consistent with your messaging. It's an ongoing process. You have to nurture your brand. You cannot, do campaigns like a week and then not do anything. 6 months, people will forget, and you need to be there. So be consistent. That will go a long way for your brand. And thirdly is really know your target audience. You have to know them at the back of your hand, and you have to give them solutions that they really need. So don't try to force sell anything. That day of cold calling is gone. You have to understand your brand, and you have to understand your audience and curate solutions for them.
Wonderful. Kriti, on that note, and your 3 wonderful lessons, marketing is not a stopgap arrangement. It's an integral part of your business. So build it in from the very beginning. Second, you said was be consistent. And third one, which is so important, know your target audience. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for speaking to me about so many different aspects of marketing and branding, and sharing with me so many different experiences you have. I particularly liked your comment on culture and how important culture is in building a market brand in a diverse market.
Yes, it's massive.
Very interesting markets, America and India.
Yeah.
For speaking to me, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.